some decent
Yeah.
rugby. Is that about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was born here and I'm taking care of my parents who are 88, 89.
Yeah.
So we just about to come home and help with mum and dad who are starting to fail.
Very nice. All right.
So we see mum every day.
I think we are now live on the internet. I can see levels going up and down, and me and you, Ian, out there on the internet talking away. Ian McCormick joining us in the Department of Conversation. Thank you, sir. I very much appreciate you giving me some time.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Now, listen, I want to probably start off by just saying your story has intrigued me for a very, 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 very long time. I'm going to... Oh, I need to change my little mouse thing there.
You're not that old, man.
I am that old. Can't you tell? Look at the thing. But when I found you, when I found your story, you looked more like this, and sounded a bit like this.
Ian McCormick, born in New Zealand, 32 years old.
Telling your story about being in... Where is Mauritius? Is it? I'm thinking, is it part of Asia?
Indian Ocean, just off Madagascar. So you
got
wow,
okay. So
Mozambique,
Africa. Right.
Madagascar, Seychelles, Comores.
But your story about when you were a young fella, diving at night time, being... I'm gonna nutshell your story, which is probably a terrible interview technique, and then we're going to talk about it.
It's nice to have someone do it, man. You can do it all.
But being stung by a deadly animal, being attacked by a deadly animal, basically sort of nearly dying, or maybe dying officially, and kind of having a near-death afterlife, seeing the light going down the tunnel experience. And it's always intrigued me, always fascinated me. And I saw you coming to Dunedin this week. You're here for too short a time for us to catch up in person, but graciously you said, well, let's have a chat anyway. So thank you, and I'm very excited to speak to you. It's a very exciting thing. So, Ian, do you want to give us a nutshell of your story or your story? I mean, you know what we've said. We don't have really a time limit here. We can talk for as long as we want, pretty much. Tell us what happened to you, Ian McCormick.
Gosh, I'll try and condense it too. It's on the internet on my website, A Glimpse of Eternity. So there's tons of versions of it, from 5 minutes to a couple of hours. Born in Tauranga, raised in New Zealand, farming, fishing, diving, surfing, rugby, race and beer. So
a Kiwi.
Typical Kiwi.
Typical Kiwi,
mate. And I was I did a degree at Lincoln University, so I was a farm consultant. We used to milk 360 cows over in Tirau, Patara area, South Waikato. So I loved outdoor, loved shearing, loved fencing, haymaking. But what I had a passion for when I could was surf and dive.
Right.
And so I'd watched a bunch of movies over the years, and one of them really hooked me, called Endless Summer.
Yeah.
It came out with a bunch of Californian kids surfing without winter.
They just basically follow summer around the globe and go to all the best surf spots in the world.
When I heard the title Endless Summer, I thought, mate, having a few winters down Kaka Point, porridge at Curio Bay, down in the Catlins, you know what I mean? Putting on full steamers and having snow coming on the beach. give me some warm, sunny weather. And so I saw the movie. I'd finished my degree. I'd been working as a consultant, and my mate who was at Otago doing law. Both of us very keen surfers said, look, let's do it. Let's just go for whatever, year, 2 years, and just get it out of our system and chase the waves. And so in 1980, with our surfboards and our billabong, backpack, off we went. Surfed Australia, surfed Indonesia, Sri Lanka, ended up in Mauritius, surfed there, met all the local Rastafarians and Creoles, and then ran out of money, went to South Africa, surfed Jeffreys, Elands, saw the game reserves. So I've been traveling for 2 years, and I was about to go overland up through Africa to Morocco, Mondaka, and then into South America. So I was already hooked. 2 years wasn't enough. I was going to go for maybe 4 years. By that stage, I'd been exposed to a lot of different beliefs, lots of different people's isms, Buddhism, Taoism, humanism, Darwinism, mate, the whole pack of cards. I was an atheist, so I was just checking it out from the side. Skeptic in many ways. Brought up an Anglican, so I'd been christened and confirmed as a kid. But it was something that I thought Mum does. No one else in the family followed, which is something we did as kids. Never met God, never had an experience supernaturally. So my whole world was pretty much Kiwi, searching for the meaning and truth to life, checking out the waves. And then my brother, who was in Fremantle, he got out of the army while he was over in Fremantle. He said, Ian, will you come back for my wedding in Thames? And I thought, oh, gosh, other side of the world, mate. I thought, mate, I love my younger brother. Yeah, I'll come back. So I thought, I'd heard that Reunion Island had some awesome surf, Madagascar. So I flew back into Reunion, surfed, then went back up to Mauritius. I was waiting for the flight to head on to Australia, off to Perth, and then down to Bells and Torquay, and back up to New Zealand. And my Creole friends, when I arrived back, this was about April of 1982, my Creole Rastafarian friends welcomed me back in the community with surfing, diving, pulling bongs, chillums, and they were all kind of Peter Tosh, Bob Marley boys. And then eventually I was waiting for that flight out, and they'd taken me night diving the year before when I lived on the island, and we'd dive for crayfish and for crab. And they said, Ian, you want to go diving tonight? I said, yeah, mate, yeah, sure. Then I saw a storm at sea, and I wasn't so sure. And they said, no, the storm will miss us. We're going down to Rivière Noire, Black River. Come with us, best diving. And so dropped in the ocean as I went, and I saw these box-shaped, bell-shaped with cubed and finger-like tentacles. I thought it was like a juvenile cuttlefish.
Right,
I reached out in the leather gloves and grabbed it, and unbeknown to me, it was what they call a box jellyfish. And the Aussies call a marine stinger. So she's really deadly, mate.
So hang on. So you actually had one in your hand.
Well, I had leather gloves. When you're grabbing crayfish, you don't grab crayfish with bare hands.
Right, gotcha, of course.
So we dive with leather gloves to grab hold of the crab, grab hold of the crays. So I'd seen it with my torchlight, and I reached out to grab it, and I saw it. Oh my gosh, it's a jellyfish. I've never seen one like that. Just clocked it, didn't take any more attention of it. And next minute, I'm getting hit by them. I swam into like you know how sometimes it'd be like a super jellies and thousands of them in the water?
Yeah.
I swam right into like a minefield of them. I get hit 5 times. To protect my face from being hit across the throat, get out of the water, my arm's up like Popeye. It looks like I've been whipped. My whole arm is blistered, and it feels like someone's put a branding on my forearm.
Well, let's have a look at that, because before we came on, I thought I'd bring up some horrific photos of people who have been stung by box jellyfish. So there are some of the photos of these. Obviously, these people who have recovered, though, or recovering. This is not the seconds afterwards, but the damage those things are doing to these people's legs are pretty horrific.
So what they do, it looks like you've been whipped. It literally traces right across your body. And I had all that. They eventually do pass and heal up. This is nearly 40 years ago this thing happened, so most of the scars have gone off my arm. But at that time, horrendous, burning sensation. You can feel the poison coming up into your lungs. And I knew, man, I've been stung by jellyfish before, but never anything like this.
Right, wow.
And I'm a lifeguard. I'm an instructor in scuba, done veterinary science at university, so I think I'm in serious trouble, mate. The Creole fisherman turned white. When you see a black Rastafarian turn white, you kind of freak out. He looked at me and said, Ian, on vis ça, tac, Stephanie. And in my limited French, one would hit you, and he called it invisible or invisible one, you'll die. He said, how come you not know it, Ian? This one kill you, brother. I said, I not know Simon. He said, allez, vitement, Quatre-Bons Hospital. Well, I'm on an outer reef, knowing where the Quatre-Bons Hospital is. It's up on the mountain range just behind where we surf. It's the middle of the night. And he's telling me, get on the boat, urinate on your arm, can hardly breathe, so I'm peeling my wetsuit off, trying to pee on my arm, knowing that the Aussies had used vinegar. I thought maybe urine's like a bush medicine. I'm trying to apply a tourniquet to limit the poison, and these fishermen are yelling commands to the young kid who's taking me to shore on the boat. I said, Simon, come with me. He said, Ian, there's no motor. There's only a boy, the pole. Let him take you to shore now. It was a mistake. They should have come with me. But anyhow, Kid gets me to shore, stand up and collapse, and the poison has taken out half of my body already. I found out from the Aussie lifeguards later, if I'd been stung in the throat, you'd mostly be dead in 3 or 4 minutes. Go straight to the brain, straight to the heart. If you stung on the extremity, 10, 15 minutes, maybe 20, depending on how people react. Then you slip into a coma and never come out.
So this is one of the things that when I tell people about your story, like I'm like, oh, this guy stung, people always say, how deadly is the box jellyfish? And if people are asking that question right now, so I did a bit of research on this before we came on board as well. So here is an example of the box jellyfish if people are watching, and if you're not watching, you're just listening, have a listen to this. This is on the website, lifescience.com, says some 20 to 40 people die from stings by box jellyfish annually in the Philippines alone. That's just one part of the world, according to the US National Science Foundation. But because death certificates are not required in many countries within the range of box jellyfish, worldwide fatalities from box jellyfish may be seriously underestimated. So they are completely deadly. There's also, if you look them up when you're searching this, you come across stories of people who have survived it. And I guess for me, I'm a bit of a logical dude, and I kind of go, if there's a news story about someone surviving a box jellyfish sting, that means they're pretty deadly. That's like, the man survived being shot 5 times, because you would expect someone being shot 5 times to die. The story that says he survived a box jellyfish sting implies, these things are pretty serious. You said you got hit 5 times. Do you know whether that was like 5 different box jellyfish? Or...
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I saw them.
So that'd be like a full, like if you got bit by a snake and then bit again, it would have less venom. If you got bit by 2 snakes, it'd be full hit of venom, full hit of venom. So would it be the same for box jellyfish, like 5 full hits then?
I'm not sure. They say they're 100 times more toxic than a cobra.
Whoa.
Potentially the second deadliest venom known to man. Some encyclopedias and National Geographic and Discovery say that the Pacific blue-ringed octopus, also in Australia, is the deadliest, but very few people get killed by it because it has to bite between the finger digits. It's a small fluorescent octopus. But the box jellyfish venom is supposedly the second deadliest toxin known to man.
So hit by 5 of these things. And
fortunately, I'm urinating on it immediately, because what often happens is that people don't, and the neurotoxin that's in the microscopic cells, just like a bee sting, they start to continually pump neurotoxin into the vein.
Okay.
So when you urinate, I found out later, it causes the microscopic cells released from the tentacles to actually let go and stop any more venom coming in.
That's just for the box jellyfish? Because you often hear about people urinating on jellyfish stings, or is that the same is that why it is for all jellyfish?
That'd be the same for any. You're trying to minimize the ability of that tentacle that you can't really see because it's so small from injecting more poison. So when they said urinated on immediately, I did. And of course, I'd already had enough toxin in there. Whether that minimized a huge amount that other people would have been hit by, I don't know. But when someone tells you to pee on your arm, mate, and they've been diving all their life, you just do what they tell you. These are locals, And when you see a Rastafarian turn white, you know this is deadly serious.
Right.
Turned out men in the village have been killed by it.
Wow. Okay, so you've made it to the beach and you've collapsed.
Yep. The young kid I've come with is freaking out because he's left 2 other divers on the reef. I'm trying to tell them we got full wetsuits. Mine was a short sleeve vest. That's why I got hit. I had the forearm and face exposed. The other divers had full steamers on, and they felt the water was cold. I felt the water was hot. The young kid's panicking. I'm saying, ambulance, gendarme, telephone. This kid runs down the beach, leaving me to go back out to rescue 2 other divers that are completely safe. I'm now left there on the side of the road in a terrible position where I'm overwhelmed by tiredness. I begin to shut my eyes, and as my eyes close, I hear a man to my right audibly say, "Son, if you close your eyes, you never awake again." Well, when I looked to it's kind of looked in the direction where the man's voice was, there was no one there, like the invisible man.
Freaky.
I thought, well, that's whacked out. I mean, people in Tokanui and Sunnyside, they hear that kind of stuff. Mate, I'm not a Looney Tune. What the heck is that voice? Because there was an invisible voice, but audibly. And I'm hearing it.
Yeah.
And of course, I then think, well, as a lifeguard, the last thing you do is sleep. This is a coma. In fact, you're taught to slap people, even with anti-serum being injected. You must keep them cognitive. So I realize now I'm right on the edge of death. I have no idea that's the voice of God. I don't believe in God. I'm a complete heathen. I have no idea the Bible says that my sheep hear my voice. I was a black sheep. I spent a long time practicing. So here I am hearing someone that I don't even believe in, tell them if you shut your eyes, you'll never awake again. And I've got a heap of the story. I'll just cut to the chase. By the time they got me into an ambulance, I'd gone into the complete paralysis, dehydration, and the death rattles. And as they're racing me,
what is that? What are the death rattles? I don't know that term. What does it mean?
Well, have you seen someone have like an epileptic fit or a grand seizure?
Yeah.
Their body shakes uncontrollably.
Right.
Well, when this poison went so deep into me before an ambulance arrived, my whole body had literally shaken, literally out of control. And then I found a icy cold death come into my bone marrow and begin literally creeping up my legs, and I could feel necrosis or death coming upon my body.
Wow. So it was a physical feeling of like my feet have just died, my calf muscles are going. You could feel it literally coming up. Wow, creepy.
It went from a burning hot to dehydration to icy cold, and then literally out of control shaking. And as they were racing me in the hospital, I could hardly hear my heart beating, and I began to look on the inside of the ambulance what appeared to be like a video clip of some kid's life. I'm thinking, what the heck is this? I mean, as a kid, we took very few photographs because we had box brownie cameras in my year. So it's not like Facebook. Just stuff all photographs. And so I don't realize as I'm watching this kind of video clip, it's yours truly, it's me. And I go, oh my goodness sake, that's my life. I thought, man, that happens before you die. Am I that close? So I quickly checked my vital signs, and my mind said, yeah, mate, you're nearly dead. You're dehydrated, you're in the death rattles. You may not even make it to the hospital. I thought, well, if I don't make it, is there life after death or nothing? I said, no, there's nothing.
Wow.
When you die, there's nothing out there. I thought, but I'm a gambling atheist, and I've been wrong before.
Just, I'd really be interested to know, because we hear about people having their lives flash before their eyes. Do you remember what you saw? Like in that moment, is it made evident to you what is important in your life? Do you recall what the video was?
Yeah, Pat, it seemed to be key things that just came. It was like a recall. Now, whether that's coming from my mind or whatever, but it was literally recall. And there was almost like, oh my gosh, there's an urgency. My life has literally flashed before. I've heard about this stuff.
Yeah.
Generally, they say this just before they die. And so when I check my signs, vital signs, I've done veterinary science as a consultant, I realized, my gosh, I'm nearly dead. And then thinking, well, I don't believe in life after death, but I'm a gambling atheist. I'm thinking it's like Russian roulette.
Yep.
I've heard plenty of opinions of what happens. I thought, well, I'm not afraid to die. I'll soon find out if there's life after death.
It's sort of like that phrase, there's no atheists in foxholes. If I'm going to go, I might as well wager on if there is in case life after death.
Oh, one guaranteed thing is you're going to die, but you don't expect to die at 26.
No,
right?
True.
You think you're invincible. And so as I'm lying there dying, unbeknown to me on the other side of the world, my mother told me later, she saw my face. And she said, I heard a clear voice, which I knew to be God, because he's the only Christian in the family, saying, your son Ian, your eldest son Ian is nearly dead. Pray for him now. Well, my mother had heard something like that when her own mother had died. And she was shaken, ran to her bedroom, dived onto the floor and started praying. My dad didn't have a clue what was going on. And next minute in this ambulance, as I'm asking, is there life after death? I see a clear, like a vision or picture of mother on her knees praying for me.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, my goodness sake, what's mum doing here? And then she looks at me, she said, Ian, no matter what you've done wrong, no matter how far from God you may be, son, if you call out to God from your heart, God will hear you and God will forgive you.
And did she say that in real life all those miles away? Like, have you... When you caught up with your mum and she said that she was praying for you, were those the words that she had said?
Yeah, well, from my understanding, yes. And I interviewed her, and we've put it up on the website, her and Dad relating to what mum was doing. And my mum's now 80, she's 88, coming up 89. She's in a rest home now. We're just helping looking after her most days. And so I'm glad I got it a few years back when she was much more, lucid. She's getting old.
Yeah.
And so as I lay there, not knowing this was happening, but I knew full well this appears to really be mum, like present time. She's asking me to call on God. I'm going, and that he'll forgive me. I'm going, well, it's too late. Done so many sins. I'd be a hypocrite praying and believing in a God who I've denied. And by now, at 26, I've seen everyone else's religions. And so I thought, well, if there is a God, show me your face and I'll pray. Well, I didn't see Buddha, Krishna, Vishnu, Sai Baba, Kalima. I didn't see anyone except Mum appear. And I thought, well, Mum's not God, but she prays to Jesus. She's a Christian.
I was going to say, I thought if you had said like you had a vision of a face, I would have said to you, how did you know that was whatever? But I get it. So you saw your mum, and your mum had a connection to a particular religion, a belief.
Well, that's right. And to me, Christianity was the last bottom of the pile. I've been there and done that. So to me, I thought, if there's a God there, show your face and I'll believe. I need to see to believe. Well, I didn't see, and trust me, I'd seen Buddha, Krishna, Vishnu, Sai Baba. On the chillums was, Ganesh. So I'm sitting there going, who is God if he exists? Who do I pray to, Mum? And as I lay there, well, Mum's Christian. She's taught me the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father's Prayer as a kiddie. That's Christian. Jesus taught it. What have I got to lose? As a gambler, I'm putting all my chips up on one number, but I haven't seen anyone else appear. So I tried to pray the Lord's Prayer. My mind went completely blank. My mother said, Ian, don't pray from your head, you pray from your heart. I thought, well, Mum, my heart's like stone. I'm so cynical. I don't even know if there's anything good left in it. I said, but God, if you actually do exist, if Mum's right, you do exist, help me to pray. I can't remember the simplest of prayers that she taught me, the Lord's Prayer. And I just lay there waiting. Next minute, words of light appeared, like in the Star Wars movies, you just kind of scroll.
Yeah.
Next minute, words appear in front of me. Forgive us our trespasses and sins. I thought, well, that's in the prayer. It's not the beginning. How could God forgive me of all my sins by saying these simple words? I thought, well, I ain't got time to list them all, too many. I've been there and done that. I said, but God, if you can forgive a degenerate like me, I committed so many sins, I've broken most of your commandments, please forgive me. The words disappeared. Fresh words came up. Forgive those who've trespassed and sinned against you. I thought, well, that's easy. I'm not a vindictive, revengeful person by nature.
Yep.
I can forgive anyone, no matter what they've done to me. Next minute, two men's faces appear in front of me. I thought, what the are they doing here? And then this audible voice that I'd heard this night speaks again, said, son, will you forgive these men for what they did to you? I thought, you must be flipping joking. We'll rip their head off, you know what I mean? And as I lay there, I realized that I had a choice either to die bitter and twisted or actually forgive them and get more of the prayer. I began to...
Who were the men? What did they do? Do you talk about that at all, or is that a private thing?
Well, if you hear the whole story, you'd know who it is. These men had basically left me for dead.
Right, okay.
Two different... So that there was a fair amount of anger and injustice and, justified anger, as I'd say.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I lay there and I thought, well, they're the tip of the iceberg. There's a few other people on my hit list. And as I lay there, I went, okay, God, I don't want to forgive them, but if you can forgive me of all my sins, I'll forgive these men. As I said that, their faces disappeared. Fresh words came up. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I thought, what the heck does that mean? God's will be done. Or so far, it's my will be done. I'm independent, I'm self-sufficient, I'm proud of it, I've done it my way. If I pray this from my heart, I'm going to have to surrender my life fully to God. I thought, well, God, I need a miracle. I don't even know what you're doing in heaven. But if you can help me, I'll follow you all the days of my life. As I said that, the entire Lord's Prayer appeared in front of me. And for the first time, by personal revelation, I prayed it from my heart. An incredible peace entered the ambulance. And I thought, oh, my goodness sake, I've just met God. That's extraordinary. I thought, I wonder how many men like me, complete heathen, find God in their dying moments. I think you've got to be very careful not to judge people because you have no idea who's praying for them. I thank God for my praying mum. And so I, as I lay there, it was almost as though time went into slow motion. I'd been in a car wreck years before where the car had rolled 3 or 4 times. In that moment in that ambulance, time slowed down like the Matrix, literally slowed down.
there were people listening, wondering all sorts of things, or watching, wondering all sorts of things. And it makes me think about, being the average person listening to this podcast and wondering some stuff as well. Like that first, how do you know that, for example, that first time you heard that audible voice, you attribute that to God and it wasn't just a memory slash delusion slash something based on the toxins that were flowing through your blood?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was rationalizing, trying to understand, is this the effect of endorphins from a neurotoxin? I could have given every intellectual argument.
Yeah, sure.
The problem was I knew that when it said forgive these men, that wasn't my voice. And when it was specific in what they'd done to me, no one else knew. So I was dealing with a person I'd heard back on the beach, attributing that to a prayer that my mother had taught me. And now I'm finding that voice is associating itself with a religious prayer that Jesus taught.
And the same voice, voice you heard in the ambulance, the same voice in the ambulance as it was on the beach. Like, so what does it sound like? Can you, I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but was it a deep booming voice?
It was a male voice for me, but I don't know how God represents himself for female. But there was just there was a familiarity, but I knew that it wasn't me speaking. It was another person talking.
Right.
There was a peace about it. There was a quietness about it, but there was an authority in it. When I joined the docs, it can take a while to join the docs.
Yeah.
When I joined the docs and realized I was potentially talking to a person called God. Now, I'd prayed the Lord's Prayer a million times before as an Anglican, stand up, sit down and kneel. I could polly-one a crack, and my mum used to say, "You prayed yet, boys?" "Yes, Mother, our Father which art in heaven, God bless the cat, dog, and nana." Meaning this repetition, but never from the heart. That was the first time in my life I understood the prayer.
Right. So there was, because of the circumstances, there was a more reality brought into the words.
Mate, when you're dying, there's a little bit more seriousness associated with it.
Yeah, I get it.
It's like Russian roulette, man. You could have your name on that bullet.
So, did you actually technically or clinically die at any stage?
Yeah, I was. I was pronounced dead for 15 to 20 minutes and literally put into a morgue.
Okay, so where are we still in your story? Are we still in the ambulance right now? Are we about this is the bit we want to hear.
I'm still in the ambulance, just finished praying, but I think it's a critical point because this is the supernatural part that I was involved in, seeing this prayer, praying it from my heart and experiencing a peace that hasn't left me in 40 years. Wow. So as they get me into the hospital, I'm suddenly realizing doors swinging open, nurses trying to take blood pressure, 2 machines, no pulse, nurses freaking out, doctors running with anti-serum. One doctor dived in front of me, said, "Son, don't close your eyes or you'll die. Stay awake. We're going to try and save your life." They're smashing my hand, trying to get a line in, saying dextrose, anti-serum. I feel like a pincushion, but as this is happening, I can feel myself coming out of my body. And I'm going, "Mate, this is not good. Whatever they're doing is not strong enough. It's not working." And though I remember they said, "Son, that's all we can do for you," stood over me as they had me hooked up with drip feed and dextrose. And I was desperately trying to keep my eyes open, but I couldn't. As I shut them, I felt this extraordinary release, and the machines that were monitoring my vital signs flatlined. And in a second, I felt the battle had finished.
And you heard that, like in your head, you heard the doot.
Yep. And then, of course, because it's a neurotoxin, it's different from a drowning or a heart attack, because you can be heart dead but not brain dead. But with a neurotoxin, it specifically attacks your neurological system. When it hits the central cortex, you're brain dead on death.
Right. Wow.
It's different from drowning.
Yeah.
It's different from a heart attack.
So it actually attacks your brain. Neurotoxin.
It's attacking your neurological system.
Neurological.
It's a neurotoxin.
Yeah.
That's why it's so deadly. It's so deadly. So a neurotoxin will kill you. And so I am pronounced dead at the point of flatlining. In a second, I'm out of hospital. You know how some people have said how they can look down upon their bodies, 10, 15 feet above it?
Look, on that point, there are some hospitals in the world that do things like, if there is a cupboard in an emergency room, they put notes on the top of the cupboard. Some hospitals actually do a thing where they go, and then because that's a neutral thing that if someone either floats out of their body and comes back, they can identify. So it's something that some hospitals actually test.
Yeah, well, it happens to so many people. I've met thousands of people like this, tens of thousands over the last 40 years. I might have met 20,000 people up front, face to face, who've had this experience.
Wow.
So what happens, of course, your spirit's left your body. Your physical body is just a shell. If you've ever seen a dead body, it's just a shell. The person you know ain't in it. Now, I'm, and to my amazement, out of my body, but alive. And then a second, I'm out of the natural realm. I'm in a realm of complete darkness. But it was so sudden, I'm wondering whether I have just, you know, you can go to sleep for a few minutes and turns out to be a few hours.
Yeah. I know that well.
It seemed like seconds, but suddenly I was upright, wide awake, pitch black. I thought, what the heck? Did I die? Or have I woken up and the idiots have turned the lights out in the hospital, you know? So I thought, well, then don't panic. Let your pupils, which must be dilated, adjust to the dark and turn around. So turn 360 degrees around, no light. Well, that's very unusual. Even as a night diver, there's usually light fluorescence on the reef. So I reached out to my right, looking for a wall to turn the lights on. Couldn't find one. Came back looking for my hospital bed. I thought, great, now you've lost your bed, you idiot. So as I'm groping around looking for a table, a bed, something physical to touch, I thought, man, it's so dark you can't see your hand in front of your face. So I bring my right hand towards my face, and my right hand passes straight through my head. I thought, two hands, you can't miss your head. Both hands go straight through my head. So then I go for my chest. You can't miss that, certainly not now. The six-pack's a keg. So I went straight through, nothing. Hands, nothing. I thought, well, that's crazy. How can a man feel his body is there, but when he goes to actually touch it, it's not? I remember Granddad had fought in Gallipoli and fought against Rommel. And when he came back from the wars, as a young kid, I used to follow him like a little hush puppy. And one day he visited one of his old comrades of art in the RSA. He had legs missing, you know, taken off in action. Yeah. And the old boy said, scratch my foot, sonny.
Wow.
And, of course, it's like pulling your chain.
Yeah.
I thought he's got no legs, that idiot. But, of course, in those years, you were seen and not heard. So I didn't say anything to respect my granddad. Thought this guy's lost it, you know, he's psycho. And my grandfather talked to me and said, son, what's wrong? I said, grandfather, he had no legs and he told me to scratch his foot. Then granddad proceeded to talk about how men could tell you that they could feel the limb was still there.
The phantom. It's a phantom limb, yeah. Yeah. So I'd like to understand a bit more about the body type thing that you're going through, which is what you're getting into now. Could you see? Oh, it's pitch black. I was going to say, could you see your hands? So it's pitch black, so you can't see. But like right now, if I close my eyes, I can feel that there's hands here. So you could feel that there was hands, but it was too dark to see anything.
100%. If you talk to people that have amputations, either from industrial or military guys, they'll all tell you they can feel the limbs still there.
Yeah, right.
They can't necessarily see it, but they can feel it. Now, what was so bizarre, I'm thinking, my goodness sake, I could, not losing a leg or an arm like grandfather's friends in battle, my whole body could be back in the hospital and I could actually be standing outside it in this realm of darkness. Where am I? So I'm questioning, is this reality? And I could reflect on where I've just potentially come from. As I stood there, I felt the most incredible evil in the darkness. Growing up, every now and then you'd feel spooked. You'd come into different places and you wouldn't feel comfortable. You felt like a demonic presence or an evil presence. Well, I felt like I was in an atmosphere where the entire atmosphere was permeated with evil. And then I felt like somebody was looking at me. There was some presence in the atmosphere. And then a man to my right screamed out of the darkness, "Shut up!" I thought, shut up? I've said nothing, not realizing that my inner thought was speech. They could hear what I was thinking. Where am I? He turned the lights out. Shut up. And so then another man screamed at me, said, "You deserve to be here." I thought, deserve to be where? Where the heck am I? Another man in front of me, "You're in hell. Now shut up." I thought, what a load of flipping. Oh, if this is hell, son, where's the party? Well, my world, hell's just fear. If you terrify someone enough, I'm sure they'll believe in your religion or God. So I thought, you confront your fear. If these boys are telling me this is the pit, well, where's the bears? Where's the woman, mate? Very hard to grab a bear when you. Very hard to pull a cone off your bong when you couldn't find it. You know, and very hard to have sex if you can't touch this. So here, my sudden my heathenistic sex, drugs, and rock and roll world just got blown away, thinking, well, that ain't happening. You got no body. And then I'm thinking, well, isn't hell supposed to be some kind of little boys with red jumpsuits, horns
and pitchforks,
trident pitchforks,
Yeah.
rotting corpses? So I'm running between the religious argument of what it is and the heathen argument, and neither of them are kind of matching up to what I'm experiencing.
So,
does that make any sense?
No, of course not, because it's I mean, it makes sense what you're talking about. I understand the words you're using, but it feels like it needs to be really experienced to actually get the full gist of it, which sounds horrific, that and I don't want to experience it, but it's
well,
not.
You don't want your worst enemy to experience it.
No.
Basically go, no one wants it.
So I understand what you're saying, but yeah, it's very hard to, I guess, cognitively go, what would that be? Because I'm still sitting here thinking, hang on, I'm sitting here going, I can feel my feet are on the ground right now, but that's because my feet are on the ground. How do you feel your feet aren't there on the ground if they're not there? And then I also want to know, how much did you move around in this thing? Did you like run or move, or were you frozen to the spot with fear, or what?
Well, as I said, I'd already looked out trying to find a wall. I moved around looking for a bed, lamp, and then suddenly I became aware that I was in a realm which actually had other people in it, were telling me to shut my face and I deserved to be here, and I was in hell. Well, all those three things were kind of hitting me quite hard. So I'm standing here going, well, where's the rotting corpses? Where's the maggots? Where's Dante's Inferno? Where's the party? And I'm thinking, well, there can't be rotting corpses with maggots, which I'd seen in some of the macabre paintings in museums and churches, because my rotting corpse is back in the hospital. Your physical body doesn't make it. So I'm trying to understand and comprehend a whole download of stuff that I've been taught and shown, and it's not the dots aren't joining up here too well. And then he used to say hell, fire, and brimstone. So I'm going, well, where's the fire?
Yeah.
You know? So and then I'm realizing, well, fire will go off light. This is a realm of complete darkness, and I have no reference to Bible because I don't even know the Bible, never read it. I'm just going, I'm in a place of complete darkness. I've heard like Psalm 23, the Lord's my shepherd. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death and deep darkness, I shall fear no evil. So I've got a little bit of Sunday school, a couple of abstract scriptures kind of floating around from childhood. But I have no ability to fully understand this. But I thought, my goodness sake, this could be the real hell. And as I'm standing there, you wouldn't want your worst enemy to come here. I thought, you can't get tired, you can't tell time. It's like you're in a realm of darkness. And you obviously
didn't stay in the space that you were in. But
no.
But I guess what I'd be interested to know, maybe this is more based on your opinion, is that what do you think? Do you think that that's what quote unquote hell is, just in darkness by itself forevermore, or did you think that was, I don't know, like the Catholics talk about purgatory, and I'm not getting into whether people believe or don't believe that, but it's like the waiting room to heaven based on my Catholic upbringing. Were you in a space that was like a waiting room to go to elsewhere, or, you know, what do you think?
Well, I mean, there's lots of opinions. The Bible actually says that men are held in darkness until the day of judgment. And then in Revelations 21, the end of the Bible, in Revelations 20, it talks about how death and Hades, or hell, will be cast into a lake of fire.
Right.
So when we read the scripture, it says that it's not until Christ returns in his second coming that Hades, or hell, is cast into the lake of fire. And then you read in Acts 26:18, Paul the apostle said, in the spirit world there are two kingdoms. The kingdom of darkness ruled by Lucifer, or Satan, and the kingdom of light ruled by Jesus. So and God is an all-consuming fire. He led the children of Israel by a pillar of fire. Jesus' eyes were a flame of fire. Elijah called fire down from heaven. So when you study the word fire, it all has to do with God. Right. When you study the word light, it all has to do with God.
So that has
when you study
that has a really interesting perspective for people who are, you know, I mean, you've got different variants of people who where their religion is, sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, like you, I always would have thought of this concept of hell being fire and brimstone. But what you're saying is, if there's light, no matter what the source of that light, it's on the side of good. If there's darkness, it's on the side of evil, sort of thing.
Well, absolutely. So fire gives off light.
Yeah.
Darkness is the absence of light.
Yeah.
So if you consider light and fire as in representing God, which he does. It says the Christians will be baptized in the Holy Spirit and fire. God is an all-consuming fire. He's a refining fire. Jesus' eyes are a flame of fire. So he led the children of Israel by a pillar of fire. Fire came and brimstone came down from heaven on Sodom and Gomorrah. So the fire is actually the manifest presence of God. Coals of fire, Isaiah 6, holy, holy, holy.
So so you're in this space of darkness, but like I said, obviously didn't stay there. So what happened? How did you
well, I'm
get out,
basically
whatever?
I'm resigned to the fact that God has every right to leave me here and judge me here. I deserve it. I've rolled the dice of life. But of course, I had prayed in an ambulance and given my life to him. And what was amazing is that the evil was all around me, but it couldn't touch me. Later when I read, I think in Romans chapter 10, it talks about greater is he within me, and nothing can separate me from the love of God, neither life or death or principality or power. So I stood in this darkness, feeling incredible presence and peace upon me, with evil all around me that couldn't touch me. As I stood there, radiant light pierces through the darkness above me. As a shaft of light comes down, it envelops me, and I feel a weightless sensation and shoot through my spiritual body, and I begin to lift up into the light.
So was it literally like a tunnel of light like people talk about?
No, this was a beam of light emanating forth. I think as Isaiah said, those walking in darkness have seen a great light. Light shines in the darkness and the darkness flees. So have you ever seen sunlight pierce through the clouds onto the onto the ocean or onto the land?
Yeah, my mum used to call that the fingers of God when they come through, and it kind of looks like that out of the thing. That was what it was. Yeah.
And sometimes you might see one shaft of light coming down.
Yeah.
What was interesting, normally light from a distance dissipates, but this light from a distance was concentrating and pinpointing me in the midst of the darkness. I find myself lifting up into it. I feel like a speck of dust coming up into this light, and I can see far above me what appears to be a circular shape opening from where the light is emanating forth from. I'm then going, is this real? It's like, beam me up, Scotty. What the heck is going on? So I look back over my right shoulder, and far beneath me, I can see the darkness dissipating beneath me. And then for some bizarre reason, I have a Sunday school memory of Lot's wife in Sodom and Gomorrah, when the angel of the Lord delivered them out of Sodom, and the angel said, whatever you do, don't look back, lest you die. So I'm looking back into this abyss of darkness where I've just been delivered from, and I'm thinking, you moron, you might fall back into it. So I turned my eyes back towards this radiance, and as I did, I could see that I was getting closer to an opening. When I got right up in front of it, I could see it was the beginning of a tunnel. So I had moved an immense distance up into the shaft of light, a bit like you'd see a can of shaft of light hit in the ocean or the land. I had moved up a large distance up into this light, and then saw there was a tunnel or passageway between the two kingdoms. So the tunnel wasn't the source of the light. The source of the light was at the end of it, a kingdom of light at the far end of the tunnel, small and narrow.
I have a really random question for you. There is a movie, it's actually a comedy movie called This Is the End in 2013. From 2013, it's Seth Rogen and a whole bunch of his mates who made it. And I have no idea what you're describing from experience, and I'm not going to play the audio to this because I don't want to get us kicked off YouTube or anything, but if you have a look at this, I'm serious. I mean, this is like what you're describing to me. See those shafts of life there? This is the end. This is the end. It's the end of the world, and they're being sucked up into heaven. See, they're in the light. They're going up into heaven, and it's like, absolutely. I just think what you've described, it looks like there's comedians. There's the lights going up. If people are watching with us, being sucked up into heaven beyond it, and then they, like that. Is that? I mean, random as because absolutely. It's a silly comedy movie. Is that kind of what you're describing?
Absolutely.
That's hilarious.
What was so amazing, you're moving at the speed of light, but you've got no physical body to restrict the speed. Like I used to ride RD350s, Triumph Bonnevilles. I used to get the old Mark II Zephyr with Bedford truck piston, try and go as fast as that sucker would go. This is before Fast and Furious. So I love speed. The trouble is I was moving at the speed of light with no restriction of a physical form. Incredible. And so I then enter this tunnel. And of course, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and life. Small and narrow is the way that leads to the kingdom of God. Few find it. So I'm moving between two kingdoms, light and darkness, and I am being drawn towards the light in this tunnel. The first thing I see is at the far end, a wave of thick intensity light has just broken off the end, the source, and is moving at a high intensity speed towards me as if to greet me. As this wave of light emanates through me, it deposits a living emotion called comfort. Now, I tried Southern Comfort and a few other comforts in my life. This comfort was literally like a living comfort. It comforted the core of my being. I thought, my goodness sake, it's a living light. I moved further down, about halfway down, another wave of thick intensity light came, and pure peace from the tip of my head to the base of my feet, and just washed into me. I thought, man, I've looked for peace in my inner peace down a fair few different pathways. This peace is extraordinary. And in 38 years, nearly 40 years, this peace hasn't left me. Jesus said, I'm the Prince of Peace. Peace I give you, not of this world. Well, as I'm feeling this peace emanate through me, I thought, in the darkness, I couldn't see my hand. I could feel it, but I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
I wonder if in this light I can see what I look like.
Right.
So I quickly turned my head to the right and saw my outstretched arm and hand. And as I moved it, it moved. I could see straight through it. It were fingers. It was my hand responding, but no longer bone and flesh. It was like I was a being of light.
Did it still pass through one another? Like,
of course.
Did you put your hands together?
Of course. Oh, 100%. Then you realize why you could do this. And it says that we'll be transformed in a twinkling of an eye. Death, where is your sting? The sting of death is sin, but the free gift of God is eternal life. Will be changed. So first the natural, then the heavenly. First the earthly, then the spiritual. But we shall be changed. And I could see that what I could feel, I could now see. Then I knew men who have lost their limbs, they will actually be able to see their spiritual body if they come into the light.
So did you end up being in what you would call heaven? Like, did you get through the tunnel and were you in a physical place?
Yeah. So next minute I come out, another wave of light hits me, joy. I come out of the tunnel, and then I realize the tunnel made it look incredibly small. I now come into a kingdom or a dominion of light, a realm of just enormous light.
So pause there, because I want to understand. When you say a kingdom, I mean, because I can only think about, basically movies giving me an impression of it. Is this like a flat plane that you can see outwards and see places? I mean, like, is it describe what that is?
To start with, what I'm seeing is a light that you'd say has to be the center of the cosmos. All life, anything that's ever formed must come from the source.
Okay.
It's like you've come into the center or epicenter. It's like journey to the center of the universe. I've just come into the source of all light and life. This is the beginning of life. And it is thicker intensity as you look towards the core. But the eminence of the light is just going out beyond, you can't even begin to imagine the scale of it. So as I'm standing there looking at this intense light, which has the intensity of laser light, but is not destroying your eyes, I'm going, what on earth is this? Is this just an energy source of good in the cosmos? Is this a presence of good? Or is there something or someone in the center of that light? As I'm questioning this, I hear a voice from the center say, Ian, do you wish to return? Well, that answered the first question. There is someone in there.
Same voice?
What blew my brain was the same voice.
It was the
that spoke
same
to
voice.
me, the Lord's Prayer.
All right.
Same voice that talked to me on the beach. Now I'm going, oh my gosh, the person that's been talking to me habitates in this extraordinary light. And he's asking me if I want to return. Return where? I turn back and I see the tunnel going back into hell, into Hades. I'm thinking hell, darkness, hospital bed. Am I dead out of my physical body? This is reality. I'm talking to some being of light called God. Or am I lying in a hospital bed, comatized, starvation of oxygen, endorphins from the poison, tripping out of my skull, and I'm on what's called a NDE, a near-death experience. I am not dead. It's all taking place in my head. I am actually hallucinating and having one heck of a trip. Yeah. Or is this reality?
Yeah, that's the that's the
So
that's the question, isn't it? That's the. I mean, like it was probably going to be one of the last questions I asked you, but that's the question. Like, where is the proof, sort of thing? Where is the evidence for that's happening without it just being a near death?
Well, unbeknown to me, which I couldn't see, but I find out fairly soon, is that my body has been not only pronounced dead, certified dead in the accident emergency. The next thing is they move it to the morgue, where another doctor has to make sure that the prognosis or the diagnosis inside the accident emergency is correct. Then they certify. Okay, so I'm not seeing the fact that I'm literally dead, brain dead, certified by 2 doctors, and one doctor's gone off to write up the papers, and yours truly comes back into it, but that's another story. So here I am. I am now relating to this person who knows my name, asking me if I wish to return. So I speak to him and said, look, I have no idea where I am. If I'm dead out of my body, I wish to return. I don't know where I am. He said, Ian, if you return, you must see in a new light. I thought, light, see the light. My God, I've seen strobe lights, red lights. Are you the true light? And he spoke. He said, Ian, God is light, and in him there is no darkness at all. 1 John 1:5. As he speaks it, just like I'd seen the Lord's Prayer in the ambulance, words of light appear what he's speaking. Out of this realm of intense radiance comes these living words that are saying, God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. I'm standing there going, well, I've just come from a kingdom of darkness. These men called it hell. I didn't believe in hell. I thought it was a religious thing to scare people. I didn't believe in God, but I'm standing for a being who has a light that fills the cosmos, and I can't see any darkness. So in my own mind, I am searching around. So I look behind me, expecting to be at least a shadow. But of course, to my amazement, the light is piercing through my spiritual body of light and casting no shadow.
So you said that this experience, you felt complete peace, complete comfort. Why would you want to go back?
Well, let's move on. So there's a reason why I came back. No one wants to come back. At this point, I'm thinking, well, I've listened to Taoism, yin and yang, which put light and darkness in the circle of life. They make light and darkness equal. In fact, in the yin and yang, I had 5 of them, town and country stickers on my surfboard. And in the darkness, they have a dot of light. Possible. In the light, they have a dot of darkness. Impossible. Light and darkness are not equal and opposite. So here in one statement, I thought all religions taught the same thing. In one statement, which I'd never realized, that this was straight out of the first epistle of John chapter 1, verse 5. It's straight out of the Bible. Only God himself, through Christianity, taught God is light. All other religions don't teach that. And so I stood in absolute amazement, having a revelation that God truly is light. We are a mixed bag. We have good and evil in us, but he has got no darkness, no evil. He's separated from darkness. As I stood there, I thought, if he knows my name and he knows my thought before I even speak, someone's made a dreadful mistake and brought the wrong man up. I should self-judge, send myself back down the pit, crawl back under some rock now. So I moved back from the light to judge myself, because I knew this is God. As I do, waves of light come off him, and I'm expecting this to be the wrath or the anger of God. But instead of wrath and anger, I feel unconditional love and acceptance. A pure liquid light floods in, and people say, how the heck do you know it's love? I said, well, I knew what lust, sex, and passion was.
Yeah.
Occasionally I felt a little bit of love from my mum and from a few mates, but this love was unconditional, no strings attached. I began to weep. I thought, men don't cry. Control yourself, you idiot. And as I tried to control the tears, more tears came. I said, but God, are you too old or something? Can't you see? I've cursed you. I've slept around, taken a heap of drugs, committed adultery. Start just offloading the stuff I've done that should cause him to reject me. More and more love keeps coming. And then I just sobbed like a little boy. And he speaks to me, said, Ian, in that ambulance when you prayed the Lord's Prayer and asked me to forgive your sins, I didn't forgive some of them. I forgave all of them. And I just burst into tears. I realized what it was called amazing grace. And somehow, through one prayer, God had washed my spirit as white as snow. All darkness, all evil had been cleansed. I stood before him as if I'd never sinned before. And I was overwhelmed. The love that had come, it casted all the fear. I opened my eyes to see that I was encased in pure white love and liquid light. But the light around me would be like a glowworm in comparison to the enormity of the glory and the radiance that's surrounding one person called God. So as all men fall short of the glory of God, I am standing outside this glory realm, and I realize the intensity of that light is pure love, because God is love. He's just loved on me, and he's accepted me and forgiven me. And I'm now standing in the presence of God, overwhelmed with a peace and serenity, which still hasn't left me in 38 years.
So you've said that your body is in a morgue now while you're experiencing this. Can you explain to me what happens next? Like, do you literally just wake up in the morgue? Do the doctors actually
thinking,
electrical?
Man, I'm having this experience, an encounter of love, and I'm thinking, man, I want to see who's inside there. If I can see him, I can truly ask him the meaning and truth to life. I can put a name to God. I don't need to ask any other person on the planet who God is. If I could step into the light that's surrounding him, perhaps I can see him. So I stepped forward, knowing that if he said stop, I had enough of the fear of God in me to have stopped in a second. So as I walked into this light, it was like walking into a realm like miniature stars. It's like this realm began to heal my broken heart. I began to weep as he began to touch a part of me that no woman, no family member ever got that close. I was weeping with joy because he was healing my heart of hearts. I'd looked for love and given my heart to many women and ended up with some pretty broken stuff. God's healing power was touching the core of my being. As the veils of light began to part, I thought I must be getting closer, but it was so bright at the time I was looking down, and as the veils opened, here was a man standing maybe 15 feet away from me. I could see his bare feet. A robe or garment of light was reaching down to his ankles. It's as though he'd grabbed a cloud of this radiance and formed a garment and was wearing a robe of light. As I lifted my eyes up, I could see the chest of a man, deep like monk robes, pure white, and his hands reaching out with his arms directly to me, almost like arms of love, like, come here, son. As I looked at his face, I turned away. The intensity I saw, the source of all the radiance in the cosmos, was actually coming out of his face. I thought it would have just burned my eyes out, but it didn't. So I looked back and I could see that out of his face was literally coming the source of the entire cosmos. Oh, that if he spoke, galaxies, constellations come into existence. It's like looking into eternity within eternity into his face. His hair, pure white, shoulder length. I thought, my goodness sake, that looks like Jesus, but Jesus got brown hair. What the heck? How come he's got white, radiant hair? Where's that? But I knew he was God. He looked like Jesus, but I'd never seen any painting or icon or statue or anything that had Jesus with pure white hair. I'd never read the book of Revelation, which says in Revelation 1:13-18, his hair is white like wool, like snow. His face shines like the sun in full strength. All I'd seen is Jesus as the Son of Man. I had no concept that he was God. He was the exact representation of the visible God, that the entire universe was created through him and for him. But I could see in his face that the cosmos would come into existence if he spoke. So I walked towards him. Light emanated out of his face. I felt purity. I felt an innocence like I'd never had sin before in my life. And as I got right up next to him, light emanated out of his face into mine. And I felt an abstract word called holiness. I felt totally holy and pure. I stood within 2 feet of him and reached forward to see his face. And as I did, he began to move. Before he would unveil his eyes and his actual countenance, his entire being moved. And right behind him with his left hand, he showed me a whole new earth, fields, crystal clear river, mountains, flowers, blue sky. I looked up into the heavens. It's like a new Jerusalem. I said, God, what is this? He said, I've created a new earth and a new heaven, river of life. And I thought, oh my goodness sake. I thought heaven was supposed to be clouds and Morgan Freeman, people playing harps and fat little Italian babies firing Cupid arrows at you or something. I had no concept that God had created a new earth, that it was untouched paradise. As I stood there, I knew I belonged here. It was like I'd come home. As I'm looking, I thought I'm going to enter in. As I just about to step in, Jesus stepped right back in front of me like a door of light into eternity. He said, Ian, now that you've seen, do you wish to remain here or do you wish to return?
Yeah.
I said, definitely remain here. I'm not married, have no children, or none that I know of. No one loves me. I have no one to go back for. I've never felt such unconditional love and set before me as like a Garden of Eden paradise. Why wasn't I born here in the first place? As I stood there, I thought, there's nothing to go back for. So I looked back to say goodbye, cruel world. As I looked back behind me, to my amazement, here was a clear vision of my mother.
Right.
My mum was still praying. My mum, of course, is still alive. It's not some dead apparition. As I'm looking at her, I thought, oh, my goodness sake, had I not seen her in that ambulance, I would not be standing there. Everything she's trying to tell me about God and heaven and hell is actually real, and she doesn't even know the half of it. How would she know that I pray? What ambulance driver, what paramedic, what nurse could say, what diary, what friend could say this boy became a Christian? No one. It was all done in my heart in an ambulance. Everyone had thought that boy's gone to hell. So I thought it would cripple my mother.
So
how could my mother?
So
I wrestled with it.
So you had to come back for your mum.
Loves me. I want to go back for her, mate.
Yeah.
If you talk to anyone that's come back, almost all of them have come back for someone else. I mean, no one wants to come back.
When you talk to your mum, I don't know, in the days, weeks, months, years, decades following that, how does she feel about you not going into that new earth because you came back for her? Does she, I mean, might sound a bit weird, but does she kind of feel any kind of guilt about it? Like that she wish you had gone in because then you would have had what?
No, she wouldn't have. No, not at all, because she would not have known. I'm sure if my mother had known that I was a Christian, that I was following him and living for him, I wouldn't have come back. She would have been quite content. The fact, well, okay, we've lost the son, but at least he's in a better place. But when I knew in all intensity, she knew I was a million miles away from God. There was nothing that even indicated anything of a repentant life or a changed life. So I knew I came back for her, and she understands that I actually loved her enough to come back and to honor her and to tell her that her prayers were so effective.
Do you have any, I want to get back to the kind of waking up in the morgue thing in a bit, and we don't have a heap of time left, so maybe I'm interested because you just used the phrase there, became a Christian. And I'm interested, there are, some people around the world who don't believe in a Christian faith. They have other faiths. Yep. Maybe they're brought up in it. I mean, if you're born in India, you're probably more likely to be a Hindu. If you're born in Pakistan, you're more likely to be Muslim. And especially as a child, sort of thing, you kind of have no control over that really, up to a certain point where you become an adult and a bit more autonomous, so to speak.
And for me, of course, I went through all those thoughts. I had would I have seen Krishna if I'd been born in Nepal? Would I have seen Buddha if I'd been born in Tibet? And for me, you understand, I'd given Christianity a fairly good whack. I was 26 years of age, so I had written Christianity off. I was looking more at Buddhism and Taoism than I was in Hinduism than I was Christianity. So it wasn't. The danger is that we think, because you're brought up in a Western world, you've been brainwashed, that's who you're going to believe in. I've got people who are Brahmin priests who have met Jesus directly, glorified form, and been changed, and they've had nothing to do with Christendom. I've met Muslims who've had dreams where Jesus stepped into them, and they got saved right on the moment. The problem with it is that many of us have got a religious upbringing which can actually put you off. I had never encountered the person of Jesus. I'd only heard about religion. Yeah. I'd never met a person who was alive. I still had him in a church, crucified on a cross or sitting in a stained glass window. I had no concept that you could hear his voice, know his love, and actually meet him. So he's alive.
So what I was going to ask was, you've associated with like being a Christian to getting into this new earth, like you said, because you're a Christian and that. What about all those people who aren't, but maybe haven't had the opportunity to find the belief that you're talking about? And I'm not talking about fully grown, autonomous 40-year-old adults who adhere to another thing, but is there something else? I guess I'm thinking about the 2-year-old Muslim kid sort of thing. What happens with them? Do they still get a chance to get this access, in your opinion, or what?
Yeah, well, that's the question. Where's the age of accountability? Where's the age children are a gift from God? Do they return directly to Him? How will God judge individuals? I think ignorance and complete lack of knowledge, God will judge them much differently from people who know. And I think there's an accountability in what you do know and what you do with it.
Right.
I've often, from a farming terminology, you often see a farmer with a drafting gate, and sheep are going through the drafting gate. Now, if I was the person judging humanity and I was in charge of the drafting gate, I'd make mistakes.
Yeah.
But if God is the person who knows the sheep, he knows their heart, he knows their intent, he knows what they've suffered, that's fine. He's the judge, not me. Thank God none of us are God. Thank God none of us are the judge. Otherwise, we'd be in real trouble.
So what
I'd love to know is that he's given opportunity for Christendom to actually share the gospel to the world, and people hear that, people receive that, people choose not to. In fact, Jesus is mentioned more in the Quran than Muhammad. We will find there's more reference to Jesus being a healing God or a reincarnation of somebody. So Jesus is in there. The fact is that Jesus himself said, "You shall now have no other God, bow to no other grave and image or idol. I am the Lord thy God. I am the way, the truth, and life. There's no other name by which you can be saved." So what was fascinating for me, I'd studied Tibetanism and Nepalese, and what was happening is they'd gone into where these Tibetan monks had died and gone into what they called nirvana. They had been enlightened. They had actually died and gone into this light, but had never seen what was inside it. And they thought the final opportunity is to get into the light. What was amazing for me, I said, God, how come are you showing these guys that don't even believe you're the light? He said, to show them that I am the light of the world and try and help them come to find me. So God is continually revealing himself to people and bringing himself in dreams and visions and revelation to try and draw them to himself, to show that he is the true light of the world.
Yeah. It's interesting just to think about as well, some people who, for whatever reason, maybe don't have the cognizant or mature ability to do that. I mean, I could be silly and say, the kid that's born and then dies not 30 seconds later or whatever, or the person who has an intellectual impairment that doesn't allow them to get there or whatever. So it's an interesting thing to at least address. Look, I think we've only got a few minutes left, Ian, and it feels like we could go for another 2 hours, but I really want to get the part of the story where I'm assuming you sort of woke up in the morgue, or however that actually happened.
Nearly there. So I saw my mum. I turned back and said, God, I want to go back for my mum and tell her what she believes in is real. He said, Ian, if you return, you must see things in a new light from a heavenly, eternal perspective, not a temporary, earthly one. And I understood it. If I could see from his heavenly, eternal perspective, through his eyes of love, change everything. So I said, I looked back towards the tunnel, and here next to my mum appeared my dad, my brother, my sister, and then instantly hundreds of thousands of people, like a sea of humanity, going off into infinitum. Now the Canadian geese fly in a V formation, so directly behind my family was a V going off into a sea of people. And I said, God, why do you show me these people? Who are they? He said, Ian, I would like you to go back and tell them what you've seen. Most of these people will not step foot inside a church any longer to hear my name. I want you to go back and tell them. I said, but God, I don't know them. I don't love them. I love my mother. I can go back for her. But who are these people to me? He said, Ian, I love them. I desire all of them to come to know me. I said, well, I don't even comprehend that kind of love. It's hard enough to love one person. I will go back for my mother. How do I go down the tunnel, back into hell, into my body? He said, Ian, tilt your head, open your eye, and see. As he's speaking, I'm finding my head tilting, my right eye opening, and I am lying on a slab in a mortuary with I find out later, a third doctor holding my foot cupped in his hand with a scalpel, pricking the base of my foot like a dead piece of meat. He sees his corpse move. I open my eye. This poor doctor thinks he's got the evil eye of a twitched corpse, you know what I mean? And we both freak out. I then hear God's voice interrupt over my panic and said, son, I've just given your life back. I try and tilt my head to the left. Nurses are standing in the door of the mortuary. They see me, smash into each other, run, fall over, and take off like they've seen some ghost or something. The doctor is now stuck, petrified, drops my foot, and then proceeds to tell me I've been dead for 15 to 20 minutes. They've done nothing to bring me back.
Wow.
And he's trying to ascertain what I've seen.
Oh, really? So they're going, what happened? Where were you? What did you?
Well, if you had someone die, if you're a person who's just seen someone die, you pronounce them dead and they've come back to life in front of you and you're holding onto their foot. It's not exactly CPR. It's not mouth to mouth. You can't bring a man back to life by holding onto his foot.
So once you died in the whatever the other room was, not the morgue.
Accident emergency, A&E.
Okay, so the A&E, they basically moved your body to a gurney, took you to a morgue, put you on a slab. There was no on the chest. Nothing else was attempted.
There was no point because, as I said, it was a neurotoxin. They know it's pointless when your heart dead and, brain dead from the neurotoxin. It's pointless to do it. If you're drowned, heart attack, sure, go do CPR, go do mouth to mouth.
Yeah.
But with neurotoxin, it's killed your neurological brain. Your brain has ceased to live. So it's not near death.
When you woke up again, I use that term. It's probably the wrong term. Whatever. When you came back, when you were back. Were you then like, I'm 100% okay? Or was there still like a massive 6 months of recovery?
No, I could feel nothing from my neck down. He's telling me 15, 20 minutes dead. I'm going 3 minutes, no oxygen to the brain, without artificial respiration. You're brain dead. You'll be a vegetable. So I'm thinking, oh, great. God's put me back in my body and I'm going to be on a piece of meat. And so I lay there and said, God, if I've been dead that long, I need another miracle. Could you please heal my body so I can live a normal life? Otherwise, I'd rather be dead than live on a machine. As I said that, I could feel like a warmth and electricity coming from the top of my head through my physical body. I felt death coming through my feet, an icy cold sensation, life and warmth and like a low current of power was flowing through my body. Within 3 or 4 hours, my entire body was healed. And I walked out of the hospital. Okay,
so that's what I was going to say. So within 3 or 4 hours of coming back, waking up, whatever the correct term is, you were leaving the hospital under your own steam?
Yeah, I went to sleep when I woke up in the morning because I made sure the whole body was moving. And then when I woke up in the morning, still in the hospital, my Creole friends were standing outside, the divers, outside my room, terrified when they saw that I was alive. And when I moved towards them, they ran. And so I got in a taxi. The doctors and nurses tried to stop me. Said, no, son, you need to stay for observation. I said, well, I feel like everything's moving. I'm okay.
And I'm going back. And I've got a wedding to get to.
And I'm going back to Tamarin Bay.
So one
and then
thing
I began to see in the super. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I'd like to know as well. So what's the time difference between getting stung and walking out of the hospital? Is that a couple of days? Is it under a day? What is it?
No, I died. It was maybe 11 o'clock at night when I was hit. I died in the hospital. The next morning, I basically walk out of the hospital.
So you're talking less than 24 hours?
Oh, absolutely.
So this is the thing that because there will be a lot of skeptics. I mean, like part of me kind of goes, the whole visions, the whole, traveling into heaven and hell, that's something that I think is very difficult for people to accept evidence or not on based on your story, right? But I think the thing that I'm almost most intrigued with is the story of the box jellyfish thing and the recovery from that, because I assume, I mean, it's 1982, I think, wasn't it? So who knows how it exists 40 years later. But I assume, and like, I'm just going to show your website again. On your website, if people come here, people have been back and talked to, and it's on video, the nurse who looked after you in 82. They've talked to the divers who knew that you were dead. They've talked to people that dived with you. You talked to the night divers. So there's videos on your on your mum. So there's videos on your site talking about the people who were there. It would seem to me that I know that people are skeptical of I mean, unfortunately, people are skeptical of the world being round at the moment. People are, can be that deluded sort of thing. But people are generally skeptical about lots of stuff. But that would seem to be a no-brainer, absolute miracle. Show me the medical write-up for when you went into hospital with it and you walked out 24 hours later, especially when I've already showed an article about a man with one sting being in hospital, 3, 4, 5 weeks later sort of thing. Do you have any of that stuff, or is that available to see?
Well, at the time, I didn't even think about it. So I was on a plane a few days later, flying back to New Zealand, and the last thing in my brain was thinking, "Oh God, I should get my medical reports and stuff."
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So years later, everyone's hassling me, and so I thought, okay, whatever. So I flew back in there with my missus, and we went up to the hospital. You know, took videos, talked to the divers. Yeah, mate, you're dead. You know, get it. And I asked for my records. Oh, we have them. Why you come back here for so long? How come? And I'm thinking, I just want to see them. You know what I mean? You can't have them. And I thought, whatever. I said, don't mind. He said, no, hospitals. I said, look, there's a rank Xerox across the road. Let me just photocopy them and I'll come back. And he said, no, photocopying machine's all broken. You can't leave the hospital. This is hospital property. And I thought, what's wrong with this guy? This is the superintendent of the hospital.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not trying to sue you for malpractice or anything, mate. I died in this hospital and come back to life. He said, you can't have the records. And I said, can I at least look at them? And so I opened them up, and my wife and I looked at them. Yeah, dead. The trouble was, to when you start dealing with this stuff, people can get very, very edgy on it, you know, and very, very defensive. And I got quite upset, actually. My wife had to drag me out and calm me down. I said, what's wrong, honey? He said, look, dear, what if you even had the records? They'd mostly call these doctors, you know, third world doctors, misdiagnosed. He said, Jesus' records were actually messed with and mucked up with. He said, you've just got to live with the fact that maybe these guys aren't going to give you it. So I said, at least some documentation that I was in the hospital,
right.
and I jellyfish. So I've got that. I've got the Victoria Hospital in Cuttrabon in Mauritius. I then had pastors, divers, surfers, fishermen, Creoles testify. Yeah, this thing kills. Mauritian government, of course, then tries to deny that they've got any deadly jellyfish in there. And I said, what's all that about? What's all that about? Tourism. It's like what happened up in Queensland. They denied the box jellyfish in Queensland for years, though it was killing people because it was going to kill the tourist industry.
And I'm assuming that because it's like being whipped, you would have had marks on your body for weeks, months, years afterwards?
Months. And then I used I was an old hippie, so I used to put fresh aloe vera plants, cut them, and I was hoping they'd go. Now, in some ways, I wished all the scars had stayed so I could show them. But men are quite vain, right? You know, I went flipping scarred up arm and looked really sick, you know. And I talked to the Creole fishermen. I said, you guys have been hit by them. You still got scars. These are black guys. They said, no, they fade in time, Ian. They fade. They go. But yeah, at the time, it looks like, when it's current, it looks like you've been whipped, ripped across the arm, ripped across the face. But at the end of the day, people say to me, was that a dream, a vision? I said, mate, after 38, nearly 40 years of following Jesus, mate, it's real. I've had countless encounters with Christ to confirm the reality that he is alive. He's risen from the dead. And he said, I'm the resurrection of life. Those who believe me, even though they die, yet they shall live. So I've been blown out. I was just amazed at what was in the scripture. He said, read a Bible. He told me as a reborn Christian. My mother wept when I told her what had happened. I was the first one back. I was the first prodigal son back in the family, coming out of the pigsty of life. She couldn't believe it that I'd become a Christian. None of my friends could believe it. My girlfriend didn't think I was savable. She didn't think it was possible to save me.
Hey, Ian, it's come to a time where we need to move on. It's the story is unbelievable, and there's actually a movie done about it with Clint Eastwood's son. We were talking about that before. So if people, is that a fairly? I haven't seen it, so I'm asking you this from naivety. But is that a fairly good representation if people wanted to like watch more of the story, or?
Well, it's a Bollywood version. Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman had heard my testimony, and they knew that Clint's son was a surfer and was wanting to get into movies, and so they checked my story out. They did all the background checks on it, and then Clint Eastwood's son Scott said, I want to play lead. And Cheryl Ladd used to play in Charlie's Angels, the original one, back with Farrah Fawcett Mage and all that. She said, I want to play your mum. And she said, are you making any money off this movie? And I said, no. Jesus said, freely receive, freely give. I'm not making a cent. She said, I'll do all my acting for free. I said, what happened to you, Cheryl? She said, well, I was in Charlie's Angels, got completely mucked up, lost my marriage, complete wreck. My mum prayed for me from South Dakota, and I come back to God. So she said, I know what it's like to have a praying mum, and I want to play your mum for free and do all the acting in this movie. So it's maybe 60 to 70% true, but that's Hollywood.
Yeah, I guess you got to have an element which is sort of based on a true story, stuff that you can't show or that they try and telescope down for the sake of timing it or whatever it is. Hey, Ian, if people want to find out more about you, glimpseofeternity.org is the website. You are going to be in Dunedin at the, I think it's called Christmas in the Stadium, whatever the big event is this Saturday afternoon in Dunedin. If people are here and they want to, I guess, check out your story again.
Talk to me. I'm around. I'm not flying out till the next day, so come and ask questions. Come and check me out. Best thing you could do is check out the Bible. I mean, honestly, get into the book of John and the Gospels and just start reading. I'd never read a Bible, but I had a real opinion on it. It's a pity my opinion was wrong, but anyhow, find out from yourself. Go to the source of it and check it out.
Excellent. Hey, Ian, thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. I'm grateful to have had a chance to ask you. Oh, no, there's two other questions, actually. Two other questions.
Go.
The first one is, do you still surf and dive?
I was surfing a lot after that. I went in 10 years into London, and I've come home, and I'm finding it difficult to spring back up. The pop's gone. Once I get up, I'm okay.
And the second thing is,
I do dive.
When you saw the New Earth, did you see a good break from up there?
No, I just saw fields and pastures, a bit like the South Waikato, absolutely stunning.
How can that be heaven then if there's no good point break? Come on.
Well, it says that there's a sea before the throne. It's like a sea of glass. So if you're a surfer, you know what glass is.
Hey, Ian, thanks for joining us today, mate. Really appreciate it. A glimpse of eternity.org if people want to check out more about it. And for people in Dunedin, we'll probably see you this weekend.
Sweet ass.